Hello, I'm Jeff Johnston, host of the Living Undeterred podcast. And today, like every episode, it seems, I have an amazing person on the show. Angela and I both, let me say that in English. Angela and I both are members of a club we didn't ask to join, and certainly one we can never leave. Yet there are ways that we can honor those no longer with us and raise awareness and try to get the attention focused on some things that maybe the media doesn't want to spend a lot of time on. And so today, Angela Parkerson is from Owensboro, Kentucky. And Angela, I'm going to have you kind of start things off today. Just introduce yourself, kind of where you're from. And then I want to spend so much time talking about the awesome things you've done to
Okay.
honor your son and even honor Seth along the way. So, with that, thank you for being on the Living Undeterred podcast. And again, appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk to you. Yeah, so I'm originally from Bardstown, Kentucky. I live here for work. And I just kind of, like you said, I'm now in this club I don't want to be in, and it's just the worst thing. And everything about my life is different.
Hmm.
Everything has changed. I don't talk to the same people. I don't hang out in the same places. I don't have the same job. Um, After my son was killed April 22nd, in Bardstown, Kentucky, um, I I took off work like 6 months for
Hmm.
short term disability, and during that time, after my 12 weeks, I was let go of my job. So even my job,
Oh, wow.
I didn't have. So I have a new job and all of this stuff, and I cut ties with my family of origin, but for choice. It's not because I don't love them or care about them. It's because I had to love and care about myself.
Hmm.
And so everything I've done, it's just been happening. I created a group on Facebook to help myself, because I was alone in my grief.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't have anybody with me. I live alone. I have 3 surviving children. I didn't
Hmm.
want them to be burdened with my grief when they're
Hmm.
dealing with their own grief from
Hmm.
losing their brother, because all of my kids were, very close to Nick. And I started a group on Facebook called It's Okay Not to Be Okay. Love, unconditionally love and accept yourself just as you are, because the people that I was around, they say the things like, you'll be fine, you'll
Yeah.
be okay,
Right.
it gets better, I lost my cousin, I know, or I lost my dad, or
Hmm.
whatever. And I'm like, well, I lost my dad too, and this is different.
Hmm.
This is different. This
Hmm.
is not something I'm ever gonna get over.
Hmm.
I'm learned to live with it, and I don't let people tell me how I should or shouldn't feel, and I don't want other people to have to do that either. So I created that as a safe space to be able to talk about the things that nobody wants to talk about.
Hmm.
Um, and not have anybody change it to make themselves feel more comfortable. You know what I mean? Because why does my upset bother you
Right.
if I'm not okay? Why? And they want to medicate me, and
Well, I do want to talk about something and someone. I want to talk about Nick.
yeah,
So I recognize your shirt, except mine
yeah,
says Never Alone Seth.
yeah. Mhm,
And I love you for that. That was just such
mhm.
a great gift I got in the mail and the project you're doing. But before we get to your absolutely amazing project, fueled by passion, obviously, let's talk about Nick. Go back,
Yeah,
tell my listeners, tell my followers a little bit about Nick so we can relate to exactly the type of kid that he was or person that he was
yeah.
and the struggles and the journey that he was on and kind of what happened.
Okay. Well, Nick, how do I describe Nick? He's my favorite person. I
Mhm.
always refer to Nick as my dude, my guy. I don't call him my best friend because we didn't talk about things that, about me and things like that. But he was just my favorite person.
Mhm.
Somebody I always wanted to. I just admire him and his courage and his strength, just being unafraid to he could see the big picture of everything always, and life, and always wanted him to be a certain way. I call it the XYZ theory, like you got to be X, Y, and Z, and if you're not X, Y, and Z, then something's wrong with you. And Nick wasn't
Mhm.
X, Y, Z, Nick was A. And the
Mhm.
environment Nick grew up in, it was like, his dad wanted him to be XYZ. And I was like, well, Nick, you're an A and you're the best A ever. But around your dad, be X, Y, and Z,
Mhm.
or go to this church that you don't believe in or whatever, and do it because these people, it's okay to be you, but not.
Mhm.
And that kind of thing. But Nick's just, he would show up with you. He loved hiking. He loved spending time with people. He loved skating, skateboarding, um, just being with people. He was an uncle.
Mm.
He had 7 nephews and a niece, and they love Nick. He spent time with them. He listened to them. He played with them. He bought them all guitars for Christmas one year. He wanted to teach them how to play. He guitar or just spend time with them. And he's just, people, when Nick died, people told me, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I appreciate that. I
Right.
do. But I would say, I'm really sorry for yours because you really don't know what you've lost, because Nick was just, he's that way.
Mhm.
He just make you feel comfortable and have fun. And I still, it's only been 11 months and I still can't believe that he's not here.
Yeah.
Um, and Nick didn't have what you would call a struggle with substance use disorder or anything
Right.
like that. He did smoke pot. He drank alcohol. He always said he never felt like he got drunk or got high or anything. Nick was diagnosed as having Asperger's growing up.
Okay.
Um, and he was just kind of socially awkward, a little, he was the best friend in the world, but he was kind of gullible, kind of naive,
Mhm.
just, easily manipulated, taken advantage of. But I always worried about that. But he didn't care. He just showed up. He didn't care, where someone was from, what they did, or anything. He
Well,
was
the picture.
against.
Oh, I'm
Go
sorry. Go
ahead.
ahead. No, no, go ahead.
He was just like, he didn't care about money and wealth and things. He just cared about truth and
Mhm.
people and how you were. And I follow him every day. I always have. I didn't even realize it, but even now, I mean, I follow that truth, that passion. Nick is a lot like me in a lot
Mhm.
of ways, because I mean, I've always known, because Nick and I were probably the closest. We
Mhm.
spent a lot of time together hiking and doing a lot of things. But I just, he didn't, I don't even know how to, I still don't understand what happened.
Yeah, I get
My
that.
mom, I get a call on April 22nd of last year. I'm in bed and it's my mom, and she's like, you need to come up here, which is Bardstown, which is 2 hours from where I live. And I was like, well, I'm getting ready to get up and go to work. And she's like, you need to come up here. And I was like, what? She's like, it's Nick. I said, what's wrong with Nick? And she was like, Nick's dead. Nick's dead. I was like,
Wow.
what do you mean Nick's dead? Like, first of all, don't call me saying this stuff. And
Right.
I was alone, of course. So I just kind of walked into my living room and just started screaming and beating like on the floor, like, this can't be true. This can't be
Mhm.
true. And then I said a little prayer to Mikey. Mikey is my oldest son, Brandon's friend, who had died in a car accident when he was 21. And I said,
Mm.
Mikey, they just said that Nick is with you. And I don't believe them because they're not telling the truth. But if for
Mm.
some reason it's true, I need you to find him right now and stay with him. And then somehow I got in the car because I didn't have anybody to take me there. I had to drive 2 hours to go to Bardstown, and I had convinced myself that Nick was my mom didn't know what she was talking
Right.
about, that Nick
Right.
was in the hospital. So I was driving to go to the hospital to see Nick, and my oldest son called me, and he was like, "What's going on?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm gonna go to Bardstown and find out." He was like, "No, what's going on?" I said, "Well, they said that Nick is dead, and they're
Wow.
wrong because, Nick is not dead. He's at the hospital." And he was like, "Let me call." And he went over there. Then he calls me back and he said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm on my way to the hospital." He was like, "Mom, you can't go to the hospital." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to the hospital to see Nick." He's like, "Nick's not at the hospital." I was like, "Well, where's Nick?" He said, "Mom, he's at the coroner's office." And I said, "No,
Oh,
he's
man.
not." And he said, "Yeah, he is, Mom." He said, "Just come here." And I was like, "Well, I'm going to the coroner's office. If Nick's at the coroner's office,
Mm.
then I'm going to the coroner's office." And
Mhm.
he was like, "Well, why don't you come here and we'll both go?" Which, by the time I got there, then I realized, that it was true that Nick was actually gone. And, it was just a complete shock. All I know is they said that they had found a half a pill
Yeah.
in his room. To my knowledge, Nick had never taken pills or anything like that, and now all of a sudden he's dead from taking a pill. Of course, now that time has passed and I have access to some of his messages and things like that, I've put some things together to where I see, he had worked at Pizza Hut in Louisville, and it was
Mhm.
in July of last year. And this woman he worked with offered him a pill. He had had a car accident then, but I don't know why he took it. I don't know
Yeah.
anything, but he did.
How old was
And
he?
Nick's 24.
I mean, so many similar stories. Seth, our
Yeah.
son, worked at Pizza Hut too.
Yeah.
He was 23. Probably the biggest difference is Seth did battle substance abuse and addiction for almost 5 to 6 years prior to his death, whereas Nick's situation was much more. The new paradigm, I guess, is
Yeah.
is covered so much on your Facebook
Right.
rooms, is that kids are dying, adults are dying
Hmm.
of pills laced with fentanyl, that they're not the substance abusers, they're not the
Right.
addicted ones.
Right.
Um,
Because Nick had just graduated in college in 2019.
hmm
And that was right around the time of the pandemic. So I had moved back to Kentucky I was living in Florida to help my youngest daughter acclimate to college because she was
hmm
having a little hard time adjusting. But I came back to be with Nick, to spend time with Nick, because, like I said, I did always worry about Nick because he was kind of gullible and stuff.
yeah.
But I tried to give him his space and let him be an adult without, because I wanted him to know that I trusted him and he had what it took to live his life
hmm
just fine.
hmm
Um, Anyway, the pandemic happened and I work at a hospital, so they had asked us not to leave town.
hmm
I live 2 hours from him, so I wasn't even able to go up and see him anymore. I was going every other weekend to go hiking with Nick and
yeah.
spend time with him, but I guess it was during that time he was down started working at that Pizza Hut, and he just wanted to make friends.
Sure.
And that's what I keep going back to, like, he just wanted to make friends. He kept asking people to go for a hike. He wanted to look for a roommate, and everywhere he went, he couldn't. He seemed to run into a wall, But he took that first pill, and to what I understand now is most pills are not even laced. They are fentanyl
Right.
pills,
Right.
and they have a filler. But looking back from that July, I know that August. I mean, not August. I'm sorry. That October, Nick had became suicidal. That was not like Nick,
Yeah.
because Nick was he was melancholy and things like that, and he liked sad, depressing music.
hmm
That was, but for him to be that wet, suicidal. His brother called me and he said, "You need to come up here. Nick's cut himself."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Okay." Immediately he's like, "Don't tell him." And of course I didn't, but he wouldn't show me. Long story short, he cut himself, but it was like up here. And I had convinced him to go to the hospital with me. He kept saying he couldn't sleep. He just wanted some medication to help him because he couldn't sleep, and he had been trying to get an appointment at a mental health facility, and he couldn't get one.
Yeah, that's so common now. It's so
Mhm.
frustrating.
Yeah, and his brother tried to get one for him too, and they wouldn't let him because he was not him.
So how long was this happening prior to his passing?
6 months.
Okay. So this would be like considered a red flag or some type of a reaching out, you
Now,
know?
yeah,
In hindsight,
yes.
we have the
Yeah,
benefit now. You and I have the benefit along with
yes,
hundreds of thousands of other parents have the benefit of hindsight to kind of look back here and analyze the situation. But yeah,
absolutely.
I agree with you. We took Seth to a psychologist, but this was, going on 6 years. It was
Mhm.
easier to get in. Fentanyl wasn't even. I didn't even know what fentanyl was 6 years ago.
Right,
And I
right.
think the year he died, there was 46,000 deaths in the United States.
Mhm.
So it's coming up on almost tripling. Probably by the end of this year, we'll be pushing 120. I'm guessing. I don't know. It's the
Right. I
number. I
haven't
think.
haven't heard the numbers for this year, but I know last year 105,000 people
Right.
died,
Yeah. So it's at least
and
double just in five
yeah,
years, and I can't see anything indicating that this is going to change. Unfortunately,
no, no.
what's happening is in that the cartels are a corporation. So,
Mhm.
and they're smart. I'm not going to
Yep.
pat them on the back, but they're billion-dollar corporations, and
Mhm.
they are already seeing fentanyl being, heavy focus on fentanyl. So they're already now through the Chinese working on what are called
Mhm.
precursor chemicals, trying to
Mhm.
develop a stronger fentanyl. And they actually have now. There's one called ISO on the market that's
Mhm.
like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 times stronger than fentanyl, which is almost like impossible to even imagine because all it
Right.
takes is 2 milligrams of fentanyl to potentially kill you.
Right.
And so the alarming thing for me is, and I hate to be like a downer on this idea, but sure, there's a lot of emphasis on fentanyl, but man, the cartels are going to be so far ahead of us and they're going to be moving on to something else. And I think we really need to be focused as advocates to be able to switch gears midstream and focus on the next new fentanyl that's coming down the road because it's coming. I mean,
Right.
there's too much money at play. There's way too much money at play.
And then there's this thought too that they don't want to make money off of them. They're doing it to kill people. Like
I've heard that as
this,
well. I've heard that as
and
well.
it makes so much sense to me because that's the one thing, like, why do they do it? Yes, to create instant addicts that they wouldn't have had
Hmm.
before, like, with Nick taking that pill, then instantly
He needed
it's
more.
so
Yep.
strong.
Right.
I believe that he did start to battle an addiction and he didn't even know it
Well,
during
if
that
that
time.
pill wouldn't have done it
Right.
to him, another one next week would have.
Right.
Eventually, he would have hit one with fentanyl.
Right.
Eventually.
Right. And I know in October, that's what I kept going back to. It's been very difficult for me to know that I had him in the hospital, but I had no idea that he had taken any pills. He refused to take, a urinalysis or anything.
Sure.
But Nick was very logical
Hmm.
person, and this nurse that was with him was arguing with him.
Hmm.
And I know Nick, and plus Nick's in crisis, so she wasn't making the situation a lot worse,
Hmm.
and I was trying to, calm him down and talk to him, but he was just like, "Give me a good reason." And that's
Hmm.
normal for Nick. He
Yeah.
would, if you had a valid reason that he understood.
Sure.
So to me, and I kept going back to it because now, of course, I know that that was probably related to drugs, and
Hmm.
I now know in Kentucky there's something called Casey's Law, which means when someone is on drugs or alcohol and they're a danger to themselves or they don't realize what they're doing and they're harming themselves, you can petition the court to have them mandated to go to rehab, and they get a choice of rehabilitation or
Okay.
jail. And if they go to jail, they can change their mind and go to rehab.
Gotcha.
But see, I had no idea. And what bothers me, of course, was like looking back, thinking I could have saved him. I could have saved him. I could have had him go to rehab. That would have,
Yeah.
should have, could have. And
Yeah.
and I mean, I know in my mind that that's not true because
Right. I mean,
there's so many people that have.
any consolation, our son had a 6 year.
Right.
battle, and he was in rehab, and he went to all that stuff. He had the drunk drivings. He was actually in prison before he died, and I thought prison would be his rock bottom. I mean, I was
Right.
talking to my friends that, everybody hits a rock bottom. You just don't want rock bottom to be death.
Right. And
So,
anymore, that's exactly it. There is no rock bottom.
right, because it's
Rock
just
bottom
instant.
is death.
Right, right. And that's where you and I and
Mhm.
all these other just, I call you guys Avengers, like
Yeah.
superheroes for me in my eyes. I know you
Yeah.
don't feel that way, and I know I don't feel that way about what I'm doing,
Right.
but in reality, what we are doing by going on podcasts and being vulnerable, I mean, what you've done in just, and I'll be honest with you, in less than a year, I
Mhm.
wasn't in the place where you are at. I'm going on 6 years. This October will be 6 years.
Right.
Now, my wife died in June of alcoholism. So that's a lot more raw and fresh for me,
Right.
with my mom on top of that in November. And so those two deaths are more recent, but my son's death is now going on 6 years. So I'm a little acclimated, I guess is a better way.
Mm.
I've
Right.
adapted into my story, and
Mhm.
but I have to ask you a question, and I feel like I can because you and I are in the same boat.
Yeah.
But I know his 1 year anniversary is coming up,
Yep.
and self-care is the most
Mhm.
important thing for you and I, making sure
Right.
that we take care of ourselves. What are you gonna do on that day to not just honor Nick, but to make sure that you're gonna be okay that day?
Well, that's a good point that you talk about self-care. And I
Mhm.
mean, I definitely see the lining of meeting people. And I remember the first time I talked to you, you mentioned that, and some of the things you had mentioned really resonated. But I haven't really been taking care of myself as far as physically, like exercising. And I used to do it every day. I've gained
Yeah.
34 pounds. For 4 months, I really just couldn't get off the couch. I didn't
Yeah.
know what was happening, and I didn't force myself for the first time in my life. I've
Mhm.
always forced myself to do things I didn't,
Mhm.
but with this, I refuse. I refuse to just push forward like
Mhm.
nothing's happening. So I honor my pain and I allow myself to feel my pain. I reach out, I talk about it, and if people don't want to hear it, then I let them go on and about their life, and
Yeah.
I don't deal with that anymore. But as far as the day that's coming up, it'll
Yeah.
be April 23rd. So what I did is I wrote into National Day, and because Nick's love of hiking and our connection, and Nick's really connected with nature and people, it was it was his church. Like he everything about it, that was where he connected with life
And your
in
pictures, by the
hiking.
way, are amazing. I mean, I feel like I know Nick just by
Yeah,
the way
thank
you
you.
you you really do a good job in honoring him in a tasteful way, and the posts you make are just like a lot of the moms out there that are doing these
Right.
things, amazing. But go ahead, talking more a little bit about.
Well, I petitioned to have National Take a Hike with Nick Day. I made a
Great.
request and it was approved. So now April 23rd is National Take a Hike with Nick Day, and Nick liked Juice World, and Juice World also died from
Yep.
addiction, and Juice World
Yep.
had the saying of 666 999,
Yeah.
take something terrible and turn it into something good.
Right.
And Nick was actually upset when Juice World died, and Nick didn't do that. He was very disconnected from emotional things.
Mm-hmm.
He understood them intellectually, but
Sure.
that was one thing that he was actually upset about. He had a hard time with that. But anyway, we have that day now turned into that, and his sister Hannah's helping me um, with Instagram, where she works at REI. They've been
Hmm.
advertising it and things like that, and I go and talk to people in rehabilitation centers. It's what I've done pretty much since after a few months. My cousin Anthony, who is 9 years clean from heroin, and
Mm-hmm.
he works at a facility, he invited me early on to come talk to these people, and they have given me hope.
Mm-hmm.
They give me something to fight for. They give Nick's story and what happened to him purpose and meaning. And I connect with them so deeply and I fight so fiercely for them because, Nick might not have been what's traditionally called an addict, but he could have been. He ended up
Right.
doing it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
he did. I don't see it. And my son's death wasn't investigated. He was looked at as a drug addict. I
Yeah.
would call the police and beg them and tell them, like, someone murdered my son. You know,
Mhm.
they killed him. He took a
Mhm.
half a pill. How is that? How is that a drug overdose? When
Right.
he took, and I say a half a pill not to differentiate him from anyone else, but to
Right.
let people know it only takes a half a pill. And that's
Right.
what I tell them at the rehabs too, because a lot of them don't know.
Mhm.
They don't know it's in the heroin. They don't know it's in the cocaine. They don't know it's there. They're just battling this disease, which I see as something that they've had to do alone and their families alone. And that to me is unacceptable.
Well, I'm gonna give you some good news
Okay.
in that again, I have the advantage that I have a lot of time now under my
Right.
belt to figure this to kind of adapt. I'm not gonna say it gets better, but I'm gonna say it gets different.
Mhm.
And like I like to tell people, I cry probably more. Yeah, I don't cry less, but the
Mhm.
weight of the tears are so different. You know, it
Yeah.
used to be I cried and it just ripped my heart out. And like you said,
Mhm.
on the floor in a fetal position, just you can't get any lower other than death, basically.
No, and
And
yeah.
I will tell you though, little by little. Now, it took me 14 months, Angela. I was a functional alcoholic my whole life from literally 8th grade.
Mhm.
And when Seth died, my wife and I just I stayed home. I drank and drank, and we both just drank. And she ended up actually losing her life due to
Right.
the alcohol from the grief. And
Right.
in my case, on it took me 14 months, but on December 24th, 2017, I just got up one morning from my hangover and said, "Enough's enough. I'm done being tired. I'm tired of being tired. I'm sick of being sick." I drew a line in the sand and I quit. I lost 40 pounds like
Mhm.
in a year and a half. And again, so what you're going through is what 11 months into this. I mean,
Yeah.
it's perfectly normal and accepted, and it's okay to grieve your own way. And you may
Right.
take 2 years, you may take 2 more weeks
Right.
to kind of have that pivot where you just kind of wake up and say, okay, now you've done that with your Never Alone Nick initiative. So that's how you and I
Yeah.
met.
Yes.
That's how we met.
Yes.
I joined a couple Facebook rooms.
Mhm.
I still like them, but I don't like to be on them very long because to me they just especially when people get toxic in there and
Yeah.
there's some bantering back and forth, and I just
Yeah.
have no desire to get into that.
Right.
And your story, out of all the ones I saw, really, I saw this lady lost a son, and she's doing these shirts,
Mhm.
and she's doing it,
Yeah.
non-financial reasons, and it's like
Yeah.
probably losing money on this deal.
I am.
Yeah, and so I reached
There's a
out and said,
lot of
"Hey,
money.
this." I said, "Do you have Iowa taken?" And you said, "No, not yet." And I said, "Well, you do now."
Yeah.
So you reached out to me. I sent you the information on Seth, and then lo and behold, like 2 weeks later, I opened up this package and I just started bawling. I thought, "Oh my god, this is the coolest thing that anyone's
That's
ever
awesome.
done for me." And so your Never Alone Nick initiative is so awesome. Why don't you spend some time on how you came up
Yeah.
with this idea? And then we're going to segue into you're slightly a little famous now with what happened.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that,
Awesome.
which is great for awareness.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So, on Nick's laptop, we had found a tattoo he was working on. I actually got it. It's
Mm.
this never. It says "Never Alone." I don't know if you can see it,
Yeah,
but
I can.
that's
Yep.
it. And his sister's got it too. And Nick had been suicidally depressed the last few weeks of his life, and
Yeah.
he was telling all of his friends,
Hmm.
and none of them told me.
Oh
None.
wow.
They tried to play counselor with it and things like that, and I saw the messages originally, but I forgot. But what
Sure.
this started from was the Never Alone thing, and I knew that he had felt alone. I knew that he had been suicidal. I was processing all of that. My cousin Anthony had invited me down to the rehab facility. I really connected with them. I couldn't get the police to do anything. I couldn't get anybody to care. I felt alone,
Mhm.
all alone. I created my group. It was coming up on Christmas. So I thought, I can't get my son anything for Christmas. He's dead, So I tried to raise money to make some shirts and I was going to donate them. Well, that didn't go well. Like nobody donated.
Right.
And then I realized after I got fired from that job, I got a job making twice as much money. So I could afford to buy these shirts myself. Like
Mhm.
I didn't have it up front, but I just put it on my credit card and I was going to buy them just to do that. Then I got the idea, well, I'd like to have everybody have one, at least somebody in every state. Like, wouldn't that be cool if I got to let everybody have one?
Mhm.
And I just kind of made an announcement, and then other parents started getting involved and doing that, and then they felt connected to it, and then I started putting the names on there, and
Mhm.
I created the little thing where it said to say Nick and
Mhm.
never alone, and it helped me to feel like he was with these people
Right.
versus being alone in life.
Can you give me 2 minutes? I'm gonna run upstairs and grab my shirt.
Okay.
And this is going so well, I don't want to redo the podcast, but Molly can edit this part out. So I made a note for her at the 30-minute mark
Okay.
to pause it.
Okay.
I just feel like, oh my God, how did I forget to put this shirt on? So I'm gonna go grab my shirt. So just hold on.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'm just gonna Molly's gonna have to make it look like I like transformed into something. So I'm just gonna pause for a second, then I'll just jump in. So anyone watching this just saw me basically turn into somebody different. I actually, going through this podcast, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I don't want to retape this because you're doing such a good job and this is going so good that I had to go grab my shirt. So this is my Never Alone Seth shirt, and I received this from you. And again, going back to this story, so when I reached out to you about Iowa, you
Right.
were still building momentum. So
Yeah.
how many do you have all the states done right now?
Well, this is my map. I don't know if you can see it, but I have pins in there.
We both have maps, by the way.
I know, but hang on, I can show you.
We're so similar, it's crazy. That's awesome. And I got pins in mine too. I love it. So you got some people in you got multiple shirts in states then.
Yeah, so I have someone in every single state except I did not get North Dakota.
Okay.
I did not get Wyoming
Okay.
or Maine. But every other state,
I'll help you.
including Alaska and Hawaii, I got someone in every state.
Well,
So,
with our tour coming up, I can certainly find somebody for you in
yeah.
those areas, but
And it's just been an amazing journey. I've connected with people and I feel connected with people all across the United States. I feel Nick connected all across the United States with all
yeah.
these people. And I've heard them talk about their kids and knowing how my son Nick felt so alone the last few
Mm.
weeks, months of his life. And I know that was the drugs now, but either way he did, and now I'm like, he's with these people that are really cool. He would
Mm.
really love hanging out with them.
Yeah.
Like they love guitars, they like skating, they
Yeah.
like deep conversations, they like hiking,
Yeah.
they'll teach him some new stuff. They're funny.
Yeah.
These people that Nick's with now, they make me feel okay that he's not alone. Like he felt alone in life the last few months of his life, but knowing that he's with these people that I love them. Like I don't know your Seth, but I love him. I don't know how to explain it other than I just know I just love
Yeah.
them. And you were talking about connecting a mom. Um, she mentioned to me today. It kind of segues into what I'm doing now, which is that whole People magazine article that just came out
Yeah.
about fentanyl.
Yep.
Um,
Can you show us the
yes,
picture?
yes. Faces of Fentanyl Epidemic, and it's on. This is the cover, Bruce Willis,
Yeah.
and then there's another page. That's Luca, as
Yeah.
we know.
That's Amanda's son.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Amanda actually just posted today as my podcast guest.
Awesome. And then there's my Nick right there.
Okay.
Right there. Yeah. And there's so many moms. And I actually got the contact from another dad through the shirt. He was my Wisconsin dad.
Do
And
you I see more moms doing this.
I do. I see a lot
What's
more.
up with that?
Well, I can't speak to that, but I can tell you the dads that I do see are pretty involved and pretty awesome. I only know, besides you, two other dads
Mhm.
involved. All the rest are moms that I know.
Have
But they
you
have done amazing things.
have you ever heard of a gentleman by the name of Steve Grant?
No.
You have South Carolina done, right?
Yes.
And do you ever do multiple shirts in the same state?
Oh, I have sent multiple shirts to
Well,
many, many states. Yeah.
Steve Grant's the first person I met in my journey after Seth died.
Hmm.
I saw Steve was being interviewed in the Wall Street Journal because, and this is amazing, Steve lost both of his only two sons to overdose
Right.
20 years ago, 4 years apart, 4 or 5 years apart, before there was any therapy groups and face room chats. And he's like, the only person I knew that had a dead child was my other child.
Right.
He goes, I didn't know anyone else. And
Right.
so Steve was out there basically in the forefront with no support. You and I can pick up the phone and I could talk for 100 hours and get help.
Yeah.
Um, but Steve is out in South Carolina and he runs the Chris and Kelly Hope Foundation, and they've raised over $1 million. They've given out $1 million to his foundation. And Steve wrote a book called Don't Forget Me. And
Mm.
that's what one of his sons used to say.
Oh.
And it's a great book. I've read it twice, but Steve is like one of the people I met early in my journey that made me realize, hey, I got two of my three boys still here.
Yeah.
He lost his only two.
Right.
Who am I to be throwing a big pity
Mhm.
party every day and feeling bad for
Mhm.
myself when he lost his marriage over it, but he
Mhm.
remarried and he's in his mid 60s. He's successful, but it's like you can survive, and not just
Right.
survive, you can thrive after these horrific events because, Angela, that's the only road you can
Mhm.
take. The other road is not a good road. It would end up in
Right.
you and I end up in
Mm.
our deaths.
Dead. Yeah, because that was the thing at first. That was just like, how could God kill my son and not me? Like, I was pissed.
Mhm,
Like, I'm still alive and my son is gone. It doesn't make sense. How can
mhm,
Nick be and then he's not? And I spent a lot of time searching for Nick, just calling for him
mhm,
constantly. My body searched for him
mhm.
constantly. And it still does a little, but now with what I'm doing, I feel him in it. And a
Yeah,
mom told me
right.
like about this article. She was one I told some other people about it and they're in it. And
Mhm,
I'm super excited, but this particular mom, her daughter Leisha, they're from New York. Well, I was having a really bad night in my group, and that's where I go for support because, like I
sure,
said, I don't really have family support or even really a lot of close friends that are able to
right.
show up for me.
To relate to you, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I was just like, nobody cares, and this isn't working. And I'm doing all of this, and my son is still dead, and no one cares. I can't get, nothing's changing. And she messaged me and she said, I know Nick because of you. Just like you said earlier that you know Nick because of
Mhm,
me. And that to me meant everything because Nick is alive in what I do. And my son's girlfriend messaged me today. She said, "Wow, it's like Nick is still here." And I said, "Yeah, as long as I'm alive, Nick will be here."
I wanna take that for a second and kinda talk a little bit about that because
Mhm.
when Seth died, I ran into this issue with there's some people that kind of wanted it to, he wanted his, they didn't really want to talk about him. It was
Yeah.
too painful, too raw. And
Mhm.
that became a cancerous emotion that just picked away at him because they'd never released anything.
Yeah.
So, in my case, in my book, when I wrote my book, I talk about me chasing Seth.
Yeah.
Seth's not behind me. He's not dead behind me. He metaphorically, I'm chasing him. And I know,
Mhm.
like that dog chasing the van, that I'm never going to catch the van. And if I ever caught Seth, I wouldn't know what I would do. So it's
Mhm.
like, to me, it's like that. It's like a goal. It's like I'm chasing him. And you're right. I feel like the only way Seth doesn't die is
Mhm.
if I continue talking about him, he doesn't die. And
Right.
so, like on my watch, I'm not going to allow that to happen. He's
Right.
got a 5-year-old granddaughter. His daughter was born 3 weeks after he died. I mean, think about that. Three
Mm.
weeks. And when I see her, I see a lot of Seth, but I also am very cognizant that I need to start at some point acclimating her about her dad and what happened. So we talk every
Mhm.
day. She's here right now. Actually, she's at the neighbors playing with some two girlfriends, and she's awesome. Her name's Brighton, so I always say, "Hey, Brighton, you brighten my life."
Oh,
Um,
that's so cute.
but as grandpa, I feel obligated to make sure that she understands all the great things about her dad, but also the
Yeah.
choices he made. And I don't want to sugarcoat it. So I think
Yeah.
when you have children involved of
Yeah.
these people that have lost their lives to what we dealt with, I think you have to kind of dance around it a little bit, especially when they're 5.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how clear a child at that age understands. Well, they don't understand death, but
Right.
if they're 15, if you haven't had these talks, then I think that's a problem. That's when
Right.
they start coming at you and they're angry and why didn't you tell me? And
Yeah.
so, I don't know this. I talk about collateral damage, Angela, a lot,
Mhm.
and there's 800 people in the United States a day. Think about the statistics a day that die from overdose, suicide, and alcohol abuse.
Mhm.
800 a day. Well, look what one death did in your family.
Mhm.
Look at the carnage and the
Yeah.
disruption, and not just for a generation, but for the next one and the year after and the ones after that. Well,
Mhm.
Seth's the same way, and
Mhm.
these are just 2 deaths.
Yeah.
Imagine 800 a day,
Right.
you know, in the United States,
104,000 in a year.
and you sit there and you're thinking to
Mhm.
yourself, okay, there's a lot of people out there hurting, not just the ones that
Yeah.
obviously passed away, but the
Right.
ones that are left behind. you know?
Mhm.
And so we have to learn as a society to deal with grief, to deal with trauma, to
Exactly.
find coping mechanisms so you and I
Mhm.
can live productive lives. We can,
Right.
I tell people all the time, we live for the living, we honor the dead.
Right.
And
And I
sometimes it gets flip-flopped and people spend all their time in a negative way. You
right.
know, um, I don't know. I think what a learning experience this has been for me, you
Yeah.
know. It
And I
really
read
has.
your book. I listened to it.
Oh, good.
I got the Audible. You read it to me. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was good. And thank you for
Good.
the copy. I love that. But yes, I did listen to it cuz I try to keep busy with what I'm doing.
Mhm.
I create videos and graphics, and I work a full-time job, and it helps me to feel like Nick's story is doing something,
It
and
is.
it is making a difference, and I connect with so many hurting people. And for me,
Mhm.
my big passion is people in recovery and how bad they're treated, because I recently had an interaction. Well, I'm friends now with some people like in recovery, former heroin addicts, and I tell
Mhm.
them all the time, I'm like, if you told me a year ago all my best friends would be former heroin addicts, I would be like, no way, no way. But I love them, and they're amazing,
Yeah.
and they're awesome.
Yeah.
But they had tagged me on something, and this woman basically made the comment about how my son's death was like God weeding him out because he shouldn't have taken a
Ugh,
prescription
jeez.
that wasn't his. And this is me, and I shared it on my Facebook. You might have saw it, and I do it because I have purposes in what I do. Number
Right.
one, I want to educate people about fentanyl and let them know I believe it to be a weapon of mass destruction.
Mhm.
There's enough fentanyl currently in this country to kill every single person here.
Right.
This is no accident. I believe this is purposeful and targeted to kill our people. I mean, you can see it all around you in the restaurants. People are like, oh, people are lazy. They don't want to work or they're getting government money. No, they're dead. You can't
Mhm.
kill 104,000 people in 1 year and not notice it.
Right.
They're dead. This is very concerning. The DEA puts out warnings all the time about this.
And
So
what's
I'm trying to educate people about fentanyl,
Mhm.
and then I want to end stigma and shame. So I shared that story to give it a face. I called it a feeling. I had the feeling when I told them how my son died, they look at me, they give me the look like, like, oh. And they acted as if somehow my son mattered less. His death didn't deserve attention or
Mhm.
anything because he was a drug addict and he did it to himself. He deserved to die.
Yeah,
And that's not okay with me. And what I'm fighting back with is that's your stigma. Now it has a face. I'm not going to be ashamed.
right. No, I there's so many stigmas and labels, and there's so many things
Mhm,
we could discuss, and
mhm,
I do want to say that people like you taking this event that happened, trying to find something positive, and then I speak like you to many people doing the same things. And
mhm,
there's a lot of what I call them solo people that kind of on their own, they're working. And
mhm.
I'm a little fortunate in my position because I have a team on my Living Undeterred has 4 people.
Yeah.
And so I can accomplish a lot at this
Mhm.
point. But I think collectively, you being a part of our story and vice versa,
Right.
and we can get some momentum going downhill and bring a lot of awareness to this. But awareness itself isn't going to change anything.
Right.
I mean, there's
No.
plenty of examples where knowing
Mhm.
more actually makes it worse.
Yeah.
And so we got to figure out a way to find actionable items and find out the reasons why people are taking these things in the first place. Is it
Exactly.
is it they're is it they're escaping a childhood that they can't deal with, or maybe they're
Right.
escaping a demon that's in their head, or metaphorically that is, or
Mhm.
someone who is exploring. Maybe they're
Mhm.
a straight A student, football player. They're like, hey, I've never been high. What the heck? I want to try it. They're not.
Right.
So we just assume every addict is running away from something. A lot of
Right.
times they're not. They're just exploring. I mean, I was an
Right.
alcoholic and I never was exploring anything. And my getting
Mhm.
drunk was just to get drunk, and I wasn't trying to run away from a traumatic childhood or a bad job. I had a great job. My marriage was
Right.
great.
Well,
I just like I just liked getting drunk.
I was a teen mom. I had a 16-year-old mom here, not Nick, but I got married and had my oldest son when I was 16. And talk about experimenting and like where I come from and where I worked myself to be are completely different. So I tried really hard to educate my kids and do this and that and the other, but then also I can't deny the fact that they did go through trauma. Me and their dad did there was trauma involved. He was an active cocaine user, and I didn't know.
Yeah.
And when I said that at a meeting recently, I'm like, wow, how similar. I
Mhm.
didn't know that Nick had been
Yeah.
using, and I didn't know that my ex husband had been using.
I'm gonna have you hold that thought a second. My battery is running low, and I noticed my charger fell out of the wall. So hold on a second.
Okay.
I don't want it to end here towards the end. There, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, it's going good now. So Molly will edit that out too. So
Okay.
that was at the 50-minute mark. Okay. Um. Well, I guess. Okay, so we're talking about so many moving parts here, and
Right.
you know, one of the things that I have learned about this incredible journey that I've been thrust into
Mhm.
is that whether it's fentanyl, suicide, alcoholism, whatever it is, these are fall under the mental health umbrella.
Mhm.
So I think it's important that we do understand that a lot of these issues stem from underlying mental health issues that were either misdiagnosed, not diagnosed, or inaccurately treated. In our case, our son was given Adderall for attention deficit, which really
Nick was
started
too.
it started the what I say his exploration stage.
Mhm.
And he had some issues. I won't talk about him on the show here, but he had some other unresolved issues that he just hadn't found a way to work him through. But I think Adderall kind of opened that gate to, I feel
Yeah.
Adderall is just watered down methamphetamines. I mean, I that's really all it
Mhm.
is. It's
Nick
just,
took it too. They gave it to him when he was 6 years old. And
holy cow. Wow.
as someone who, like, where I come from,
6?
6,
Oh, that makes me so
and
mad.
I trust the
Yeah,
doctors,
I did too.
to know.
I did too.
So I thought, but Nick would later say, that's meth. Like, y'all are giving me meth. Like, that was
Oh, that makes
ridiculous.
me
And I'm
so
like,
mad.
I didn't know. And now it's like, wow. I will just say question everything.
There you go. I think
Don't trust anybody.
we
Just
don't want to
question
indict
everything.
we don't want to indict doctors in the medical profession,
Mhm.
and throw them under the bus. First of all, my dad's a doctor, so of course I
Yeah.
don't want to do that. But I think you're right. I think a doctor can say, okay, you have attention deficit disorder, which everyone knows my thoughts on that. That word disorder is criminal.
Right.
I have attention deficit. It's never been a
Yeah.
disorder for me. It's been
Yeah.
something that's actually saved my life.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, we can say, okay, a doctor says that, but my kid doesn't have to, they don't have to believe that. They don't have to believe that.
No, it goes back to that XYZ theory that I have, which is basically like you have to be X, Y, and Z in school. And if you're not, you have a problem.
Right.
And that's the way I see
I
this
like the way you
problem.
explain that, by the way.
Yeah, that's the way I see it. Thank you. Is that if you can't be X, Y, and Z, we're constantly telling them to change. And then you have moms or whoever like me that are like, no, you're an A. It's okay to be an A. But in
Right.
school and around your dad and at church, pretend like you've got it. And they're like, what are you talking about? That's insane. Me and Nick had to talk about this. We were on a hike after he graduated from college, and we had to talk about it. And he basically, I was like, talking about some things that had happened when he was young, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, that shouldn't have happened. And I had an opportunity to say, and I was like, I was just doing this because your dad. And he stopped. He was like, everything's not his fault.
Mhm.
And that really stopped me, and I cried, even not like to get sympathy, but it hit me
Mhm.
because he was right.
Mhm.
He was teaching me. He was always teaching me something.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just amazing to me. I look at the fact that I got to be his mom, and it's not long enough.
Yeah.
It's not long enough, but I got to be his mom, and I can't I'm not. I've heard people say about, like, making them into something bigger than they are. I don't do that about Nick. What I say is just the way he is, and
Yeah.
I say is because Nick is, he will never be was, what is always will be. And Nick is just, now that I can feel him in what I'm
Mhm.
doing, it helps me. It helps me. It gives me strength. And people say, thank you. How do you do all this? You've done this, and this, and I
Mhm.
can't do this. And I say to them, well, first of all, if we were all doing the same thing, we wouldn't get anything done.
Right.
You're
Right.
doing
Right.
this, and I don't do it alone. The fact that you support what I'm doing,
Mhm.
I'm not alone. I'm not doing it alone. You're wearing that shirt. I'm not doing this by myself. And when I'm upset and I reach out to my group and they give me that support,
Mhm.
I'm not alone, because prior to this, I have to say, I did feel alone most of my
Mhm.
life. And it's almost like Nick has given me the gift to show me that I'm not alone.
Yeah, I always say that you learn our we think that our kids, how do I say that? Our kids are supposed to learn from us.
Right.
But in our case, I'm still
Yeah,
learning from Seth. But
absolutely.
I will say this, Angela, you're no less a mom now just
Yeah.
because he's not here.
Mhm.
He needs you more than ever. And I look at Seth the same way. I'm no less a dad just because he's not here.
Exactly.
And Seth needs me as if he was 28 today, this
Right.
year.
Mhm.
And that's not going to change until I'm off this planet. And then maybe maybe my memory too people will forget about me down the road. But in the meantime, I'm going to do what I can to
Mhm.
not, I was talking to someone the other day, and the RV that we're going around the country with
Yeah.
starts in a month. I don't know when this is going to
Excited.
yeah, I don't know when this is going to post, but we'll probably already be on the road. But I was saying the other day, I said, it's going to be myself, my two boys, and one of my son's girlfriends,
Mhm.
and another friend of mine by the name of Mike Pierce. He goes by
Mhm.
Antarctic Mike on social media.
I think I talked to him today.
He's great. He's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a big advocate of what we're doing. He doesn't have any
Awesome.
kids, but he's been through some personal traumatic things. And
Right.
but I was talking about, this RV is going to be flying down the interstate, and I said, think how many kids are in this RV with us. I mean, Nick's in the RV with us.
Mhm.
Seth's in the RV with us.
Yeah.
Lucas is in the or Luca's in the RV with us.
Yeah.
Amanda's son. It's like the
Mhm.
RV is going to be full of kids
I
and
know.
even adults in their 30s and 40s. And it's not going to. I'm not going to be alone. I'm never going to be
No.
alone.
No.
I'm surrounded by the love from the living, but
Right.
the strength from the dead. You
Yeah.
know, and we need to continue with what we're doing
Mhm.
unabated, and have our bad times, and know that you're
Yeah.
a phone call away. I've called, I've used the dial a friend many times.
Yeah.
I mean, literally to get me off
Yeah.
the ledge.
Me too.
And I fully tell my friends when they be my new friends that come into my life, expect you may get a call.
Mhm.
I think that's the circle. And I was telling my son, I go, the old rumor is the older you get, your circle of friends starts to dwindle.
Yeah.
Mine's a funnel flipped upside down.
Yeah.
Mine's getting bigger,
That's awesome.
isn't it?
I tell people now, like especially if it's like my daughter, she is my best friend, Nick's younger sister, but I will say, um, can you hear this right now? Because
Hmm.
I like if she asks me a question, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be very emotional about it. Are you going to be able to hear this right now? And no is a complete sentence. And sometimes she says no, and I'm like, thank you for telling me. And then I'll talk it out with someone, and then I can come back later and talk to her.
How's the rest of your kids taken Nick's death?
Yeah. So, Hannah, she's doing her therapy and stuff, and
Hmm.
she and I are talk, and we're close, and she's working on the Take a Hike with Nick Day. She's working on designing a logo for it. We're thinking about starting a nonprofit called the Never Alone Nick Rucker Foundation, just for doing stuff like this.
Hmm.
Period. That was it,
Right.
just to kind of give it a name. And then his older brother Brandon, he has kids, and he works, and I ask him all the time, like, how's your mental health? Are you taking
Hmm.
care of yourself? How can I show up for you? How can I support you? Do you have
Hmm.
everything you need? And he's like, Mom, I promise you, if my mental health's not well, I'll let you know.
Right.
And my oldest daughter, Courtney, she doesn't really tell me anything. She doesn't really like me that much, to be quite honest. But
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. I love the fact that she gets to choose that,
Yeah. Good.
and
That's a good
that's
way to look
okay.
at it. Yeah.
And she will talk to me and let me, hang out with the kids and stuff. So, and then I was at my son's house, Brandon, the other day, and I was said something, and his youngest son, Christopher, said, "Well, that's what Uncle Nick would did." And I just started crying. I'm like, "Oh my God, he just is talking about Uncle Nick. I thought he had forgotten him because he's only
Mm.
2 years old."
Oh,
She said,
wow.
"We will not ever let him forget Nick."
That's
Because he's like,
great.
"That's my family up there." He was pointing at, and that's my Uncle Nick. And I'm like,
That's
I just
awesome.
started crying. And she
Yeah.
was like, "We will never let him forget his
Yeah.
Uncle Nick." And because Nick loved those kids, he was good with kids,
Sure.
just like the pure at heart, good with kids. And that was pretty awesome. As far as everybody else, I don't really know because like I said, I don't talk to them. They haven't reached out to me
Yeah.
since Nick died, and it's probably best for me that way. My brother was kind of directly involved in what happened, and
Yeah.
so for me, I just look at it like this is the way it's working out for me, and I'm following where he's leading me, and I do have a really big heart for recovery and those in
Mhm.
recovery, because they were so humbled by us. A couple of us moms went to talk to them, and they were just like they didn't know, like how, number one, how bad it was, or how
Mhm.
much their death would impact their mother or
Mhm.
their loved ones. And you know, I'm just greatly humbled by it. And we're going back on June 3rd, and we're going to talk to all of them at this big place in Somerset, Kentucky on June 3rd. And
Mhm.
I'm super excited about that. And I take stories from other parents who have had kids that suffered from the substance use disorder, and their stories of how much they love their kids. And
Right.
I'll be honest, I didn't know a lot of these things because the media and everything tells you people on drugs are homeless people and they
I
don't have
know. I know.
families and they don't care. And that is such a lie.
Right.
That's actually not true at all. They're very loved, and the old paradigm of hitting rock bottom is no
Mhm.
longer going to work. I look for cancer and disease. That's my job.
Mhm.
And it's like this, I heard this said the other day. It's like saying nowadays, it's like saying, wait till you have stage 4 cancer, then do something.
Mhm.
It doesn't work. They need help right away. And
Right.
I am proud that Kentucky is a state that allows people to get Medicaid and things like that. But I've heard horror stories like you you can't be clean for so many days and get into a rehab.
Well, I saw a stat that Kentucky had 49% increase in drug overdose deaths in 2020.
Yeah.
That's higher in Iowa by a
Mhm.
lot.
I just got the stats for the county where Nick died, 160%
Oh,
in
jeez.
the year that he
Yeah.
had,
Well,
and that's no accident.
yeah, we certainly have a long ways to go. I mean, as long as you and I are alive,
Yeah.
this issue isn't going away. But it's certainly,
Mhm.
we can do our best part. But I love what you're doing. I admire what you're doing. I think you're a role model and a mentor to anybody that's in this club. I like to call it a club. I'm sorry, but that's the only
Yeah.
thing that comes to my mind. And for
Mhm.
those new members that unfortunately are going to be joining this club here
Yeah.
inevitably every day,
Right.
they're all going to be looking for who are the role models,
Right.
who are the ones that did not just survive but are doing something.
Mhm.
And I think, you and I and Amanda and all Steve and all the people that are out there collectively, and all the moms that have lost children to suicide, and, myself losing a spouse to alcohol abuse. And it's like, you know, I used to think that I was in a canoe, paddling by myself.
Yeah.
And then after doing this for 5 years now, going on 6 years, I realized I'm in a big frickin' boat. I'm in a
Yes.
huge boat full of
Mhm.
literally millions of people that are,
So many.
the collateral damage, the people left behind. And, you just take suicide, for example. Think of the ones that actually take their own lives, but think of the ones
Mhm.
that attempt it and
Mhm.
don't.
Mhm.
Think of that in that family dynamic. That
Right.
mom's always wondering any phone call I get, and it's just something has to give.
Yeah.
Something has to give. And so I
Mhm.
think, let me end with this. I would very much appreciate it. Well, first of all, I know you're going to be helping us on the tour, and we're trying to get involved in a state partner in your area. Certainly have you be our advocate or on the panel as well. But on
Mhm.
the anniversary of Nick's passing,
Yes.
I would really appreciate if you could remind me or reach out to me or do something where I can wear this shirt that full day
And
on
take a
tour.
hike with Nick.
What's that?
And take a hike with Nick.
Yeah, send me the information on that if you
The
can.
people at the recovery center are actually who are able to go out are going with me. So I was so worried that no one was going to do anything, and now,
Well, send
like
me the
people,
information.
I will. They're
Yeah,
like
and
people
I
are going to be doing it. You can take a hike with Nick anywhere. So,
right. So
mhm.
and I'd love to. What day is that?
April 23rd.
Okay,
Mhm.
and that's the Take a Hike with Nick Day?
Yep,
Okay.
National Take a Hike with Nick Day.
Okay, just make
Mhm.
sure you reach out to me because I wanna stop and pause during the
Yeah,
tour.
yeah.
Maybe I'll just get you on a quick,
Yeah, that'd be
uh,
awesome.
5 or 10-minute update,
Right.
and, I'll wear the shirt.
Awesome.
Maybe I could get a couple shirts from you, for my boys and for the people on our
Absolutely.
tour.
Yes, I love
Um,
that. I
Matter of
love
fact,
that.
let's plan on
Yeah.
doing that. I'd like
Let's
to
do
get
it.
everybody on the RV that day wearing, Never Alone Seth shirts would be great.
Yes, just message me the info and sizes, and I will definitely take care of that. And I'd love to do that. I love the connection we have. And you said something about our group, our club, and I call it, like a lot of people, it's a club that I don't want you in. Like I don't
Right,
want you in it. I will push you down and
right,
hurt your feelings and fight you to keep you out if it's what it takes. But once you're in, you know this. Like I love these
right.
people. I you know where I'm coming from. I know where you're coming from. Your
Mhm,
child is not gone as long as I'm here and I can see them
mhm,
through what you're doing. And I understand that by hearing other parents say it to me. And
mhm.
it's like I felt alone before and I was sometimes had doubt and felt bad. And now it's like, you don't have time for that. Like you gotta come over here and do this, this, and this. And like you're right, I do. I need to go do these things. So yeah, I gotta do this.
Well, listen, thanks for your time. How can people reach you? What's the easiest way?
Probably my Facebook page.
Okay.
Um, I had just started an Instagram one, but I'll be honest, my daughter has helped me with that quite a bit. I'm
My
not.
kids help me with all my
Yeah,
the kitty,
so
stuff, Snapchat, Instagram,
right.
all
I
that.
have a page called It's Okay Not to Be Okay, Unconditional Love and Accept Yourself, but it's really just stuff I post on about what's going on with fentanyl and the DEA warnings and other parent
So
stories
how do you go
because
on Facebook, how do you go
mhm,
by if someone were to find you?
under Angela Marie. And
Okay.
if you do hashtag Never Alone Nick, you'll find me. You'll see Angela Marie. If you hashtag Never Alone Nick, and the
Okay.
hashtags that come up, you'll see Angela Marie, and you'll be easy. It'll be easy to find me. And yeah, I'm currently
Well,
working on a couple of projects I want to get
maybe,
going around too. So
Seth was really big into rap music, and he liked to, do all the lyric when he died, I found a bunch of lyric and unfortunately, we were in such shock that we ended up throwing a bunch of stuff out, which I really
right,
regret now, but,
yeah,
what am I gonna do? I have
right,
enough stuff of him, but there was a lot of rap stuff and things he'd written that, my wife and I at the time just made that decision that we just didn't want it around, and,
right.
but, I know right now Nick and Seth are writing some type of a rap song to
I
honor
love
him, and
it.
they're hanging out with Juice World and you know,
Yes,
and,
I know.
who's the other rapper that passed away, the younger, kinda like an Eminem protege,
Uh, I
I
think
can't remember his name.
I don't know, but I think of Prince too. Nick
Yeah,
like
Prince
Prince
too.
too.
That was our generation.
But yeah, but
Um,
Nick like Prince, so I think
yeah,
yeah.
well,
I can't think of the other kid's name though.
keep doing what you're doing. Make
Ditto.
sure to reach out to me for a resource, and I know our paths will cross many times. So, with
Right.
that, thank you very much for being on the Living Undeterred podcast, and you're never alone.
Thank you so much. You're never alone either. Appreciate it.